Welcome to Keep Sweet, the Positive World podcast. I am your host, Joshua Gonzalez, and on today's episode, I will have your bite of good news for the week, as well as an interview from someone who spends his days helping children and literally saving their lives. Some of us talk in a mic in our living room / kitchen apartment, and some of us save children's lives for a living. So that is incredible. I can't wait for that interview. But first, I want to send out my heartfelt gratitude to all of those who have listened to the first episode of the podcast. I've had so many wonderful comments and so many wonderful DMs. If you haven't listened, well, you're listening to this now, so I guess you have listened now. So thank you so much. I never thought that the first episode would get such a warm reception, but I'm so happy for it. If you can, take a moment and please go and subscribe wherever you subscribe. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, it would mean a lot to me if you can rate and also write a review. And if you subscribe or write a review, take a picture of it, send me a DM at Instagram at Josh Wadham, and you will get a surprise. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. So for today's good news story, I want again to talk about turtles, which are my favorite animal. So this story comes from Texas, which is my hometown. My home state. Oh my gosh, my sophomore geography teacher is not pleased with me right now, but that's okay. So my home state of Texas recently had this huge blizzard polar vortex storm hit it. So in Texas, in the south of Texas, there are plenty of sea turtles. And the problem is when temperatures drop, sea turtles end up getting shell-shocked, where they literally cannot move because it's too cold for their bodies. So this is dangerous for them because they often will wash up on shore and they can't eat and they can't move. And so a group of people are running around, or they did run around Texas, and they found as many of these shell-shocked turtles as they could, and they put them in a shelter during the storm to wait out the storm. So I'm looking at a picture here of this retired mom who regularly does this during the winters, and she went around and found so many turtles and piled them up in her Subaru, and then they took them to a shelter where they are fed and they have water and they are kept warm, and then whenever the weather gets warmer and it's safe for them to go back out, they'll just release them back. So far during the polar weather, it looks like the organization rescued more than 4,000 turtles. That is incredible. So this wildlife education and conservation nonprofit is called Sea Turtle Incorporated, which is like the perfect name for it. So Sea Turtle Incorporated, if you want to go to their website and find out more about them, they are awesome. So awesome. And now for this wonderful interview. I hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, today's guest is from Texas, like me, and is now living in a northern big city working hard as a doctor in pediatric critical care. Please welcome to the podcast, Daniel Chilcote. Wait, is that how you pronounce your name? Your last name? Because I meant to ask that before.
That is exactly how you pronounce my name. Good job.
Okay, great. I did it. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. You're awesome. And I think what you do is so noble and admirable and amazing, especially during this past year. I can't even imagine going through all of that. And I know that you also moved during that process and like switched hospitals that you're working at, which is even just another layer of complexity. So you have had a mighty year. Thank you so much for all that you do. I want to talk about, before we get into kind of more of your day-to-day life and what it's like, I want to get into what drew you to medicine to begin with.
Absolutely. I initially actually thought I wanted to be just like a research scientist. I wanted to cure cancer. I wanted to save the world, kind of that route.
Amazing.
Thankfully, I went to an undergraduate university where I was able to work in a lab and realized that I did not thrive in that environment. My research lab was on the 10th floor of the building overlooking the quad, and I saw everybody outside enjoying their relationships and bonding with other people. And I realized that the life in the lab was just not for me. So taking my love of science and kind of wanting to still make an impact on the world, but also leaning heavily into that relationship focused lifestyle is what really brought me to medicine in the first place.
I love it. And I also love when your original plan doesn't work out because maybe you don't like it. But like there's always so many adjacent things to go along with whatever anyone is trying to pursue. I always feel like it's always okay to change paths, and people are reluctant to do that for some reason. Well, not for some reason. I know why they are, but I feel like that's very important.
Absolutely.
And
I think that's been the theme of the last year, really. It's just being able to, if I hear one more person say the word pivot, I mean, it's really the theme of the last year.
definitely, definitely. So you are currently in pediatric critical care, and I cannot imagine that. I always feel like I could be really great in an ER or somewhere like that. I'm always like super level headed in a panic situation. And I've had like a lot of first aid training as a Boy Scout growing up. So whenever things happen, I'm usually the one to go into action and to do everything that needs to be done. Like if someone passes and hits their head, I'm always the first one to control the situation. However, I don't know, like I feel like I would freak out so much more if it was a child, and I don't know if I could like emotionally handle that. Why did you choose pediatric critical care, and how is that for you?
I chose it for a lot of the same reasons that you just said, the being level headed in an emergency situation. And I specifically really love working with families. And so
Mm.
when you have a child that's very sick and kind of um, in that very scary situation, not only do I have the opportunity to intervene and treat the child and try to make things better, I can also look at the family and have a conversation with the family and kind of help to assuage some of their fears and their anxieties when I can, but also to kind of bring them along with what's going on and kind of give them a little bit of peace in the situation. And so I really enjoy that portion of my job. That's
Mhm.
as fun as like the medicine and kind of the really interesting pathologies that I see. Being able to interact with the families is the big part for me.
And you are a pretty decent optimist and always seem so cheerful. And I know that that's probably very comforting for families and parents, especially. I want to know how, if you're able to give some tips or tools of how you're able to keep going despite the emotional toll that you may be under at times.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting that you call me an optimist because I've kind of gone through stages with myself in that.
Sure.
I think during med school and kind of seeing just a lot of the hurt and everything that's going on in the world, I at one point would have labeled myself a pessimist. And I have since kind of grown from that and been able to always try to be prepared for the worst, but be hopeful for the best. And so I would call myself more of a cautious optimist these days.
Sure. Like a realist.
Yeah, a realist. Yeah. But I think in terms of my job and kind of the things that I see, I think the hardest part about it is that I have to deal with it in that moment, but I also have to go and then take care of other patients. And so a lot of my coping strategies and a lot of the things that I've learned over the years has been to recognize the emotion, name the emotion, kind of make a plan with myself to address it later, and then go about my day, do the things I need to do, and then to really make space for myself to actually go back and reflect on those things. And that's been through a lot of trial and error. I during medical school did not do so well with that, and I thought I had to be tough and I had to bottle it all up and I couldn't let these things affect me. And that came out in ways where I wouldn't expect it, where I would be on a conversation with my mom complaining about something and she would say one thing and it would set me off. And so really finding the space, and not even finding, making the space to address it and name things and allow myself to feel it, and talk with colleagues has been a huge help for me. I think the lesson that I've been learning most recently is, I have a really difficult job at times, and even in my personal life and my relationships and with people that are not in medicine, I've always felt a great burden of I don't want to bring any of that stuff into their lives at all. And I've realized that, that's part of the package with me, is that I experience those things, I process through those things. And if you don't know those things, and I do, have a bad day and say something hurtful or do something that I shouldn't because of that, I want to make sure that I'm always giving that context, and that actually is an act of love in that process too.
Yeah. And I'm curious if in medical school, if they taught any type of coping strategies or they focused on that at all.
They did. And I think that medicine is getting better at recognizing the need for that. I think it's really hard because everybody's so different, and the way that people are going to cope is very different. There's been a lot of focus on mindfulness and about reflection and things. And for some people that just doesn't work. Some people don't like the artistic expression of their feelings or things like that. And so I think the biggest thing has been really encouraging people to find what works for them and to provide that space for them. Now I have residents that I'm training, that when I'm as a fellow, I'm getting to teach them and kind of lead them through the ICU environment. And when we have a patient die, I make it very clear to them. I said, whatever you're feeling, you're allowed to feel that. It's okay to feel that. I want you to take a second. You don't have to say anything to me. You don't have to do anything in particular, but I want you to know you're safe. You have that space, and figure out what way works for you. I say the only wrong way to deal with this is to not. And so whatever you need to do, take that moment now, or make a plan to deal with it later. But I think that in general, medicine is getting better. They're recognizing the need to take care of providers.
That's amazing. And I'm so glad that more people like you are stepping up in the teaching and the passing of knowledge to how important it is to acknowledge that. I mean, I love what you said about how the only wrong way to deal with it is to not. I mean, that goes for any person, any profession, any job. I feel like that statement alone is something that needs to be shared and amplified and talked about everywhere. I love that. So you said that at times your occupation is difficult. We can all understand that. I'm wondering if you would share with us a few of the unique challenges you may face on like an average shift, an average day. Any challenge that can be like a silly challenge that happens a lot, or maybe some of the harder ones.
Yeah, I think just starting out, it's a very physically demanding job. I work 6 days a week, and I'm on call every fourth day for 24 hours straight. And I'm there in the hospital, and I could get called at any moment to run to a code or to just, talk to a family. I could at any time just be pulled in all these different directions.
And a code is
someone needs immediate help. So someone needs interventions. They're not doing well, and so that can look a lot of different ways. But at any moment, I could be asleep in my call room and have to get up and run somewhere. And so just that aspect of the job is very demanding. And then, like I said, dealing with some of those difficult things and then getting back to work can be a really big challenge. And then, kind of like you recognize, parents are there at the scariest moments of their lives, and people don't always react well to that. And I don't expect them to. And so we do encounter families that are angry, that lash out, that, react in ways that are completely reasonable for them to react. But as a provider, it can be hard sometimes. I have to maintain that perspective of, this person is hurting. This is not about me. This is about what's going on with them, and try to have that emotional intelligence to really be able to remove myself from that and try to speak to them in a way that will address the core of the issue and not necessarily exactly what they're saying.
Right. Despite those challenges and those hard times, what can happen in your day that will make you feel like you had a good day, like your day was good, it was successful, you feel good about the entire day? Has that happened before?
Absolutely. And I think it looks different days. I mean, there's days where my confidence is a little bit lower, and sometimes just being able to get a procedure and do it well, gives me back that confidence and makes me feel like I did a good job that day. One of the joys of being in the ICU is that we have close monitoring. So if I do something, if I give a medicine, if I do an intervention, I get to see the outcome of it. And so if I go out on a limb and say, I think this is going to help, and then it does, that also makes me feel good. But at the core of it, like I said, is those relationships that I get to form with the families. And so, having a good conversation or even a hard conversation and feeling like I was able to give as much support as I could, and it looked like the family received it. That can be a really amazing day for me, and so it really looks different.
Cool. And I actually want to circle back because I understand that doctors work a lot, and I understand there is a reason that you may need to be on a 24-hour call, but to me that seems like maybe there's a better system, but maybe there's not. Can you elaborate on like why that is?
Yeah. So if you think about it, we have kids that are really, really sick, and that you have a team there in the morning who is devoting a lot of thought into looking at all their lab values, what's been going on with them, that have been there for a week or so, and so they know the trajectory of things, and they set a plan in place. And then you have overnight when a lot of people come in who are just there to make sure that we make it through to the morning. We deal with emergencies. We set the plans for new patients. But for that patient that's been there and that has a big context, it can be really damaging if you have somebody come in for just a night and completely derail the plan. And so we recognize that long shifts are demanding and are not always the best. And there's a lot of research going into that area. But at the same time, the more handoffs to other providers that you have, the more risk there is for losing information or for not providing all of the right context. And so there's not a perfect situation. We have a combination. So a lot of our supervising physicians are there just for the night. And so you have some providers that are a little bit more quote unquote fresh, and you have the providers that are there for context. And so I think as a team overall, we're still doing what we need to do to provide good care, but it is difficult.
Yeah. And thank you for that. That makes, it makes it make a lot more sense. And I understand that there is no perfect situation. And again, I just want to thank y'all all. I could not do that. And I also want to apologize for whatever critical care doctor out there had to deal with my mother whenever I was 15 months old and I had a feveric seizure. And I ended up they had to revive me at the hospital. And it turned out I had chickenpox, but they didn't know. So they had to run every test imaginable, including a spinal tap. And I can only imagine what my mother was like. So thank you. And I apologize.
You do not need to apologize. I find that, spinal taps are a procedure we do very, very often, but as soon as you mention it, I mean, people go off the rails. It's a very scary thing. And to be in that situation and not have control, I think is the hardest thing. As a parent, you want to be the one that's providing. You're the one that wants to care for your child, and you're in a situation where you can't. That gives you every excuse to act however you need to.
So what keeps you fulfilled in your job, and what will keep you coming back, and what will make you see this as a very long-term career for you, or maybe not? Maybe you want to move to another space in medicine. I don't know. Let me know.
Yeah. I think in contrast to an adult medicine, in pediatric critical care, we see a lot more success stories. Kids are very resilient. They have not had, time to wear on their bodies. They are able to bounce back from a lot worse. And so seeing those success stories, I'm just thinking of, I had a patient that we put on the highest level of life support in terms of we were taking over for her heart and lungs. And it did not look good. And within the next couple of weeks, we were able to wake her up. She was able to say hi, she was able to talk to me. And seeing those successes, as a doctor, that just brings tears to your eyes. And it gives you that meaning and fulfillment that you need to make it through all of the difficult times. And I think seeing both extremes, I have gained such a large perspective and just a shift in my perspective on life in general that even when I'm outside the hospital, I'm able to stay a lot more balanced and able to, the stresses of life and things, they still get to me. I still feel those feelings. But the perspective that I have gained really has changed a lot over the years. And so I think that's the thing that's going to keep me in this for the long run, is just the effect that I've seen in my own personal life.
And I can't even imagine what that must be like, because for me, if I'm like acting or on a stage making someone laugh, I'm in my mind, I'm not stressed or anything about it because I'm like, I'm just making you laugh up here on a stage. I'm not fighting to save a child's life. I can't even imagine having that kind of like, you have saved lives. So in my mind, it must seem like anything else you deal with in life is almost in the bigger picture, like, oh, my coffee spilled. I don't care. I just saved someone's life. Like, like I
I
can't
will. I
imagine
will
that
tell
reverse of
you.
balance.
I will tell you, if you mess with my coffee, I'm still going to lose perspective. But
That's fair. That's fair.
um, but no, I've had a lot of conversations with my sister on that too. You know that she's an artist, she's a musician,
Yeah.
and so we've had a lot of conversations about these are the gifts and callings that we have, and this is kind of how we get to make the impact on the world. And comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like it is all from your own perspective. And so I find a lot of meaning in what I do, and my sister finds a lot of meaning in what she does, and I see a lot of meaning in what you do. Like I need that. I
Oh,
need that in my life. I need art. I need happy things. I need to be made to laugh. So
thank you so much. So wrapping up here, what are you excited about for the future of pediatric critical care or medicine in general? Are there any like cool technologies coming about that you're super jazzed for, or any procedural changes or things you would like to see to make it better?
yeah, I think in general, our technology is getting better every day. And we kind of talk about pediatric critical care as being like the specialty of all the technologies. And so we get to use all of those things. And so there are constantly new things being developed. That's really exciting. I think, like I said earlier, the focus on mental health is a huge thing that I think is a big shift in medicine, and not and kind of rejecting that grin and bear it and like weakness kind of attitude that has been perpetuated in the past. I think one of the most exciting things that I have seen in pediatric critical care lately is that I have a lot of colleagues that are interested in health equity and social determinants of health. We tend to think about that in terms of a big, broad public health standpoint, but the pediatric ICU is kind of the great equalizer. Everyone ends up there when they're sick. However, we do still see trends towards people who don't have access to adequate healthcare to avoid getting as sick as they're getting. And we do see those kinds of effects on families. And so I'm having colleagues that are, partnering with those public health people and with, the clinic pediatricians to try to really figure out what are those things that we can do to address healthcare disparities. And that is very exciting for me.
I love it. Let's keep on going. Man, I need there to be more equity in the healthcare system, and I have faith that it will happen soon. So yes, please keep that going. All right. I think that is it for this interview. Thank you so much, Daniel, for being on the show and for sharing so much with us. I learned a lot. I hope the listeners learned a lot. And do you want people to find you? Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at daniel.j.scott.
Yay. And I'll put that in the episode description. And thank you, Daniel.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. I hope it was educational, and I hope you learned something, and I hope wherever you are able to take a look at what you're doing in life, and are you making a better world out there for others. If you aren't, that's okay. But if you can and you feel like you want to, go out there and do it. You can do it. I believe in you. And thank you for checking out the episode. If you liked it, share it. It means the world to me. And I can't wait to make another episode for you guys soon. So if you've subscribed, every single Thursday, there will be a new episode in your inbox. But until then, and as always, keep sweet.